All right. Well, hello, HTTA members. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Ron Ippolito, First Vice President of HTTA. I'm joined by Megan Botten. Megan, thank you so much for joining us. Megan, can you start off by just telling us where you are and what role do you play here in HTTA?
I am a site rep at Saugus High School, and I'm also a member of the negotiations team.
So Megan, that the negotiations process started in May of 2023, and so now we're at March 2024. Can you, before we jump into the articles, that's the purpose of this video is to go over, with the exception of Article 19 on money, we're going to save that to our live portion because there were a lot of questions about that. But before we get to all that, Megan, can you just give our members just a little bit of a glimpse into the negotiating process, what that looks like, and just kind of a glimpse into your world being on the negotiating team?
Well, the negotiations process starts typically in the spring of the year, before the year that we're negotiating for. So, for example, at some time during the spring of this year, we will push out a survey to our membership to see what issues are important to them, where they would like to see contract language amended, added, or removed, and a justification for why. And then we kind of take a look to see where the big issues are. We're really interested in especially the areas that affect our members of our smaller groups, like the speech and language pathologists and the psychologists, who typically don't have a large number of people telling us where the issues are, and it's not necessarily a lot of our expertise. Though we do have Ebony on our team, so she's been really helpful in that regard, in making some progress in that language. So we start with a survey in the spring, and every 3 years, the entire contract is open. So that means everything can be negotiated. We can look at absolutely everything. But for the years where the whole contract is not open, next year, for example, each side, the district and HDTA, get to open 3 articles. And they can also agree to have mutual openers, which is in addition to those 3 articles on each side. So that's what we're going to be heading into for next year. This current school year, the entire contract was open, so it was a little bit beastly in trying to determine what we wanted to see changed for this round. So a lot of our goal was to get some language into the contract now that we have the intention of going back and maybe cleaning up or adding to. There are just some things that we wanted to make sure we got into the contract to solidify and protect some of our members that weren't represented before. So after the survey, then we put together our sunshine proposal that we send over to the school board. The district sends their sunshine proposal. It's nothing really detailed other than these are the articles that we intend to open with the general nature of the things that we intend to negotiate. Sometimes it is just the article that we intend to open. And then with any luck, we sit down in August and draft out some dates to meet at the table, typically based around the school board meetings. This last year, we met the Thursday after each school board meeting, and we had this year 8 sessions with the district. So there was a time in the fall where it was every other Thursday, and our students were like, "What, you're gone again?" Because we were gone quite a bit. And then it's just a lot of back and forth with the district. We give our proposals, they give their proposals. We do a pretty good job of talking a lot at the table. It's my understanding that in the past there's been a lot of paper passing on both sides and not a whole lot of actual dialogue and negotiating. That's been different the last couple years, especially with Colin heading the district team. He's been really open to the dialogue more so than I think we've seen in the past. And in terms of when we're done, we keep going until we get a last, best, and final. And once we have a last, best, and final from the district, that's it. We're done. So there's nothing else that we can propose. There's nothing else that we can negotiate. We're done at that point because they are the ones that are in charge, and we can only try to sway their decision making, but they are the decision makers. So we do what we can to sway those decisions in our favor as best as we can.
Okay, which brings us to where we are now.
Mhm.
because we have received that last best and final. And so at that point, it goes from the bargaining team to the executive board.
Mhm.
And then the executive board at that point saw fit to present it to the membership for a vote. And so that's kind of, we're in the middle of that process now. Prior to the vote, which is scheduled for next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, March 26th, 27th, and 28th. This
Mhm.
is the time now where you put forward those questions, which we're getting right now from our survey. We have the first of our general membership Q&As is going to be coming up on Thursday, March 21st. And we discovered, of course, after the fact that we were in conflict with 4 different open houses on
Right.
Thursday, the Canyon, La Mesa, Castaic, and Sequoia open houses. And so definitely want those members there to be fully focused on open house, but also be able to have full focus on, making informed decisions. So we're still, as of this hour, we're still waiting for finalization for an additional, we are going to be adding one additional general membership Q&A for those members who were not able to attend this Thursday, the 21st. So, okay. So Megan, now what I'd like to do, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And now we're going to do kind of just a dive into each one of these.
Mhm.
With the exception, like I said, with the exception of Article 19 salaries, because that's going to be, we'll address those in person at our membership Q&As. But we wanted to just kind of go through these one by one. And by the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you want to jump ahead, this is broken up by chapter. So you can just jump to the article that is of greatest importance to you, or you can watch the whole thing. It'll be up to you as the HGT member and the viewer. Okay, so Megan, really quickly, Article 6 calendars. So it's my understanding, and I do know about this one, so I'm gonna let you speak on most of them, but I can speak to this one
Go for it.
here,
Yeah.
where we did propose to there was the question of what to do the day after Halloween. A lot of the elementary school districts have an in-service day, right? A buyback day uh, for that day after Halloween. We proposed that, and it's my understanding that the district rejected that, saying that there was no money to do that. And so instead, they turned November 1st, the day after Halloween, for this upcoming school year only, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. And so because Halloween will fall on a different, day of the year every year, but this pushes the school year back one day, makes November 1st not only a pupil free day, but essentially a teacher free, an HDTA member free day as well, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Uh,
that means the school year is going to start on a Monday and not on a Tuesday. Um, and yeah, it's a pupil free and staff free day.
And I think it's important to add also on calendar that we get consult rights on the calendar, but at the end of the day, it is the district that makes the decision on the academic calendar based on what they perceive to be the best interest of the students, and also honestly when they're going to get the highest attendance. Right, that's part of the reason why we switched to a full week for Thanksgiving, for example, because we had so many families pulling their students out that week, and so sometimes these decisions are not based on, what's best for us as staff members or what our preferences are, but rather that, they're looking at a more holistic view and looking at attendance patterns and families and, what's best for student learning as well.
Yeah, and that's really where this came from, was looking at what days have the highest percentage of absences and what could the district do to remedy some of those ADA issues, and this was one of the things that came up.
Okay. Great. All right, Megan, thank you so much. Let's move on now to Article 8, teaching hours. So this was on the 1/6. Can you explain a little bit about what's going on with this change to Article 8?
So with this article and with this language, it seems every year the district brings up the 1/6 um, article, and um, as a union, we aren't necessarily in favor of the idea of a 1/6 because it taxes our teachers and it overstresses them and overloads them, and an overloaded teacher isn't necessarily what's best for kids. But at the same time, we also understand that there are a number of our members who enjoy taking on a 1/6 and who do want to do a 1/6 for financial reasons or because it gives them the opportunity to teach something that they really love. So we made some concessions here in this article by removing the previous 2 and 4 semester limits that were on there for the assignment. So previously, a unit member could have a 1/6 assignment for 4 consecutive semesters before it had to go on to somebody else. But the problem being is that there wasn't always somebody else who wanted to take the 1/6, in which case there was a list of protocols to go through. This removes those limits on that and kind of frees up some of the master scheduling issues that we were having with it as well. We added a rubric for principals to use because the district wanted to put in language that said the most qualified and take out the language that says that the assignment would go to the most senior member. So some of our younger members who perhaps didn't get the opportunity to take on a 1/6 assignment who wanted to never really got the opportunity before because they were not the most senior member. So now with the language changed to most qualified, that frees some of that up a bit. But the problem with most qualified is how do you determine who's more qualified than another? All things being equal, how do you decide? So we proposed some criteria with a percentage rubric, and all which you can see there in the language. And we also asked that if a principal is questioned as to how they came to that decision, they need to be able to provide written justification for why they chose one person over another. And this is to protect unit members from principals or admin who might tend to play favorites in who they're choosing. So the most important one there is subject matter authorization. It just means if you are authorized to teach a subject, that's the big criteria. So for example, if I have a credential in English, but maybe I'm authorized in history, it would be more beneficial for somebody with a history credential, not just authorized, to be taking that 1/6 over me. Seniority within the district is now only 20%. It's not the end all be all like it used to be. Prior written evaluations, that just means unit members who might have had an N or a not meets on their evaluations, that might play a factor into that. And then master schedule restrictions. This is, for example, say your assistant principal calls you up over in the middle of summer and says, hey, we have a need for a class in period 5. You have a period 5 prep. You said earlier that you would be interested in a 1/6. That then allows that member to take it over somebody else because it's easier on the master schedule and you wouldn't have to change everybody else's schedule to accommodate that particular person having it. And then the other thing that was added in here was, let's see, the addition in 8962 there, the addition of a spring semester survey so that we can know ahead of time who would be interested in teaching a 1/6. So we're not scrambling late in the summer when it's surprise we need one. We already know who's interested, and that will help us be more efficient in our master schedule planning because we can anticipate where we might need an extra class. And if we know who is already interested in teaching it, we can build our master schedule around that to allow an easy plug and place if the need should arrive.
Okay, and that probably helps, in preventing that maybe the principal playing favorites, right? If there's
Correct,
already an
absolutely.
interest list in advance,
Yes,
it's not a game time decision that's happening in August.
correct.
Okay, great. All right, Megan, that was Article 8. So now moving on to Article 11. So there was a little bit of like Article 11 and Article 26 are interconnected. Can you tell us what's going on there with observation language?
Well, with this one, both sides of the table were kind of confused why the department area chairperson observations were part of 11. So what we did here was just add language that accurately um, illustrated what department chairs are actually doing. And it moved the observation part of it to Article 26, which is about par and induction. So what we wanted to avoid was this perception that department chairs are responsible for evaluating members, and that's not the case. It's not an evaluative role. Members don't evaluate members. So it's really just in the context of par and induction, department chairs go and observe those members for support in a support role, really is what it is.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving on now to Article 13. I know that this was something that was important to a lot of our members. Can you explain adding these additional days for family military leave and you know how the leave language was cleaned up and updated in Article 13?
So what we found going through the language was that a lot of the article numbers that were cited within this article were incorrect. So it pointed to articles that no longer existed. So a lot of that was cleaned up. And we did propose that an additional 3 days be added for our military families to go and see their family members off as they were leaving to be deployed, or their what's a Zoom without a cat, or if they were graduating from boot camp. But they denied that request for an additional 3 days for financial reasons, but they did make the concession that they would include that as an acceptable reason to take personal necessity, which was not there previously.
Okay. Just some punctuation cleanup on Article 16. Article 19, as we said, that's there's more nuance there, so that's going to be discussed in person. So moving on to Article 21, can you just explain, there was no change, but what was the discussion around Article 21?
We actually didn't discuss Article 21. It wasn't something that we sunshined. The district initially said that they were going to be opening up this article, and they never brought it up in negotiations.
Okay. Well, then moving on to number 25. This says in progress. So explain
Mhm.
what does this mean for because I know that the 411 model, this a lot of my sped teachers at my school have been very interested in Article 25. Explain this.
So with this one, we had a lot of discussion about moving to a 411 model. Although I think our preferred language is a case management time, to give them the case management time. Um, and it's in progress because the district did agree to make this a mutual reopener for the next session, because there's still some work that they need to do in terms of researching what, if any, financial impact it would have. They need to see what impact implementing more co-teaching assignments would have on this kind of a model. So they're not opposed to it, but it's something that we need to do some more work on.
And just to refresh our memories, a mutual reopener means that this is not one of the three that we're limited to because it's a mutual reopener. It is mutual to both the district and to HTTA. So this doesn't count against our three articles that we can bring forward next year, correct?
Correct. Correct.
Okay, great. Article 26, I think you talked about that, just kind of the interchange of language between 11 and 26. And so just clean that up to make sure that we don't have members evaluating members, correct?
Yeah, so I forgot to mention that in 11 we did change the title of it. It used to be observation responsibilities of department chairs and area chairs, but now it's just responsibilities. So it outlines what those responsibilities are, and they moved the observation language to where it is more appropriate in the context of the teacher induction program.
Okay. All right. Now 27, teacher on special assignment and program specialist. Talk a little bit about what were the changes in language here?
So with this one, we discovered that with the addition of several program specialists this past year, we noticed that they are not really represented in our contracts. So we wanted to make sure that we get them in there so that we can protect that position. And so we went back and forth with the district. This is another one that we had quite a bit of discussion on. And we got them to really detail what the difference is between a TOSA and a program specialist. We got them to put limits on them, which isn't necessarily the same as the TOSA, but they explained that the program specialist job will end when the money runs out or there is no longer a need for that particular position. Most of these program specialists are funded by grants. And so when the grant money runs out, then that position would essentially go away unless they find another way to fund it. So we agreed to removing the 4 unit member limit of TOSAs, because in our conversations, both sides were questioning what actually is the difference between a TOSA and a program specialist. And we discovered that some of our program specialists are actually probably TOSAs. So we wanted to make sure that those two titles are actually doing what they are intended to do. So we added a part of the, it wasn't included in the original, but we sent it out as an addendum. We bifurcated was the word that we liked to throw around, the difference between the TOSAs and the program specialists. So now there's a whole section on program specialists so that we can start to work on language to better protect those members as well.
Okay. And then just for clarity, Megan, before we move on, you did mention that that language was sent separately. This document, which we've already pushed out, and we're going to push that out again with this email. It's titled HTTA TA, which stands for Tentative Agreement, Full Packet and Signature Sheet. That's separate because the district is ultimately responsible for keeping all of the language, right? The language of the contract, but they didn't include that updated 27 language. And so at the end, that is
27,
now, I think
yeah,
literally
27.
like you took a picture of this because it wasn't even included in the original PDF. So
Yeah,
we have now included it just at the end of our PDF again with this title, right?
right.
Okay. All right, Megan, you're doing great. Thank you. I appreciate all this explanation. We're now in Article 28, long-term subs. Explain this to us. What was the change that was made here?
So this one actually kind of surprised some of us because the district brought this up. They thought it was unfair that we had some substitute teachers that were making more money than the teachers they were subbing for. So they proposed changing it so that the daily rate for a long-term substitute would be column one, step one of the salary schedule, which ensures that none of our long-term subs are making more money than any of our teachers. We also added in some agreements to provide substitute teachers for some of our smaller member groups that don't see kids in a group that you don't necessarily would get a substitute for, but members are performing those duties, and it's a way to protect our members from getting overloaded with someone else's caseload. So this would include psychologists and SLPs, and in a similar way that they find substitutes for special education services. They didn't want that protocol included as part of the contract, but they do have it in writing what that protocol would be so that they can find substitutes for those non-classroom positions.
Okay. Megan, thank you. Moving on now to Article 36. This was something that, particularly when we were in our rep council meeting on Monday night, really kind of piqued my interest. Tell us about this, Article 36 update.
So with this one, something that's been going on seemingly a lot more in the district is there seems to be an increase in unit members who are being physically abused by students, and some members are not feeling adequately supported in those incidences. So what we proposed in Article 36 was changing the title of it from suspected child abuse reporting to mandated reporting. And we proposed to the district that they include Ed Code 44014, which essentially says that school staff are required to report attacks on their members to the appropriate law enforcement authorities, just like it says there. And it's really just important to put it into the contract because it is a reminder to the district that this is something that they need to adhere to.
Okay. That's good. Good protection for our members.
Yes.
Moving on now to Article 38, site-based decision. What is this? I think this was like a language cleanup. Explain this.
This was a language cleanup. Can you bring up the language for that one,
Oh,
please?
yeah, absolutely. Sorry, let me scroll a little
This
bit.
was one that we went through many different versions.
Okay.
I'm kind of fuzzy what ended up being the final version.
Okay, here is
Okay, there it is.
38. Yeah, so here's 38 here.
Okay, so for this one in the beginning, we kind of figured we were questioning the need for a community member to be part of the decision making for a site-based decision. So we removed that. We had a discussion about what exactly an appropriate combination would be. So we just changed it to a simple a combination of, because it was pretty arbitrary.
Hmm.
It added in language that detailed what the purpose of the decision making team is so that people understand any unit member can bring forth a proposal. It's not just something that comes from administration. So that protects our right to put forth these ideas. And then it was a little bit of cleanup. And then the other thing that was a big change here is we added language so that a site decision proposal will be approved first before it goes to a site vote. So what has happened before in the past is a site will approve their proposal, they'll vote on it, the vote will pass, and then it goes to the district for approval, and the district might say, no, you can't do this, and then it's a whole lot of wasted time for nothing. So we fixed it so that you have to get prior approval and then you do your site vote so that there's no wasted time there. The other thing that was added to this article was removing the nonsense about providing a written description of all that. That was kind of, that's another waste of time. So we got them to remove that. And then we added in a brief time frame or a due date. So all these things need to be done by May 1st so that the school and the district and HETA have time to make sure that all of these things go through, not at the last minute. What's happened before is in June, a site might send something to the district to be approved, and that's just, it's too late at that time. So
Well, particularly if the change is something dramatic,
correct.
there's just there's no time left to make any further changes to that before the upcoming school year.
Correct. So we want to make sure that sites have enough time to really look at the process and work through the process and have time to do their voting.
Okay.
Sites.
All right. Megan, we're now on to Article 41, and that's co-teaching. Now, this is, if I understand correctly, this is a brand new article that
Brand
was
new one.
not previously in the contract. So what was the genesis of this co-teaching article, and why is it important for our members, or at least an important first step, to add this in the contract language for our members?
So the goal here was really to make sure we got it in the contract as a step one, like you said, because it is something that's coming down from the state that districts are going to be mandated, schools are going to be mandated to have co-teaching classes. With the changing laws in special education and the inclusion, this is going to be a bigger need. So we wanted to make sure that we get ahead of the game and get language in here to protect our members. And if you could pull that language up, we can
Yes.
look at what some of that is.
And
The very
this is all of
first
it right
one,
here.
yeah, the very first one that we put in there is that we want it to be on a voluntary basis first, so that admin can't just say you're forced to be teaching a co-teach class. So we want to make sure that it can be voluntary first, and then that every effort shall be made to notify participants as early as the master schedule allows. So they can't call you up, August 1st and say, surprise, you have a co-teaching class. So we want to make sure that every effort is being made to let you know ahead of time so you can properly prepare. We added in language that it is preferred that there is a minimum of 2 years teaching experience for anybody who's co-teaching, because it's hard enough starting into the profession, let alone trying to navigate the intricacies of the dance of co-teaching. So we wanted to make sure that protects our members there. We wanted to make sure that both general education and special education teachers have an opportunity to plan together and attend professional development together and attend training together. And if it's not during the school day, in which case admin, or the district rather, would provide a sub that they get paid compensation for if they have to attend things outside of the school day. So they do need, we put it in here that they do need to provide training for these people. And then 41.4, we put in there that they have to, or they're expected to share the responsibilities in the classroom so that no one teacher takes on more of the workload than another, or that the expectation is that one of them takes on more of the workload than another. So that includes a co-planning period whenever possible. And again, if it's not possible in the master schedule to provide that similar prep period, then they will arrange time for them as needed, compensated. The other big one here that we talked a lot about is 41.6. Previously, it's been the understanding of some administrators that if you have two co-teachers in a class and one of them needs to be absent, that you don't need to provide a sub for that teacher because you have a certificated teacher in the classroom, but that's not how it should be. If the teacher is out, they should be provided with a sub. So now there's protections in there to make sure that there are two adults in the room at all times, and that the present unit member isn't responsible for all the duties of the one who happens to be absent. Because what was happening is the argument is if co-teacher A is absent and co-teacher B is there, then technically they are the sub for co-teacher A, but they're not being compensated for being so. So that's why that is there. In taking the recommendations of the training that the district itself provided and hired, we put into the contract language that every effort will be made to make sure that only a third of the class is comprised of students who have the IEPs or the SAIs, to make sure that there's not an imbalance in the workload for those particular students, because past a certain ratio, it's no longer a general education class. It's now a special education class, and that's not the intent of a co-teach class. And then just like with the 1-6, we added in language that staff will be surveyed in the spring to see which staff members might have an interest in co-teaching. So again, they're better planning on the master schedule, better planning for the co-teachers. So we're really limiting the number of surprises there should be in the summer.
And then Megan, just to follow up, for those people who are wondering or still kind of wondering questions surrounding co-teaching. So this was, I believe it was, I think SB 354, something like this is, in other words, this is not something arbitrary from the school district. This is a mandate from the state of California.
Yes.
These inclusion mandates. And so what it seems to me that we're actually trying to get ahead of the game by putting these protections in place. Not every district has these protections or these guidelines built into the contract, and this is just a starting point, right? In other words, if we do see that need as we move forward and as inclusion becomes kind of it becomes implemented as the law of the land in the state of California, then we revisit this and we revise. But it's always important to take that first step and just kind of lay the groundwork for further protections for our members, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we won't know what we need or where we need to provide extra protections until we start doing this on a bigger scale. But yeah, the big thing was getting it in the contract to make sure that we have the language to start with.
Okay. Well, Megan, that's all the way up through Article 41. Like we said, if you do have questions about any of the articles, but particularly Article 19, the salary article is the one that we had the most, just looking at the survey where we had the most questions. Please either take the opportunity to fill out that survey. We're going to include it again in this email that we're sending out, that includes this video. Megan, really appreciate you taking the time. I know I think I probably said, oh, it'll only be about 20 minutes. And it was definitely, you took more than 20 minutes of your time to
Sorry.
really do a deep dive. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. I appreciate it.
And then just to all of our members, once again, we definitely want your voices heard. So either fill out that survey with those questions, or come to the general membership Q&A. That's going to be on Thursday, March 21st. And then for those of you who have one of those 4 open houses, La Mesa, Castaic Canyon, or Sequoia, we are going to be following up with information soon to confirm an alternate date for that alternate Q&A, which of course any member is welcome to attend that as well. We just we're finalizing the date and the location of that. So thank you so much, and we appreciate all of your time and participation and discussion as we move to take a vote on this tentative agreement. Thank you.